Help support AMTV by becoming a patron, an AMTV staff member, and following us over on Twitter.
Quasar Color TV System, based on a big idea in color TV. The works-in-a-drawer TV for ease of service. We think it's a better way to build color TV because the modules can be plugged in and out right up front. Get ease of service plus the advances in our solid-state chassis design. Plus, one-button Instamatic tuning. And look at the color on this actual closed-circuit picture. By Motorola.
If you grew up in the 1960s or 1970s, you may remember the exciting moment when you and your family first saw colour television. The day you traded out your trusty black and white set for a shiny new colour one. Perhaps you were an early adopter. At the time, BBC Two became the first channel in Europe to offer regular colour broadcasts. Or perhaps you were part of the majority, the many millions who wouldn't receive or consume colour as a standard until the mid-1970s. And if you lived across the water in the Channel Islands, you had very little choice, where you'd be able to watch your ITV programmes exclusively in black and white. But why? By the time more Brits were buying colour sets compared to monochrome ones, the year was 1976. It would be this very same year, in the exceptionally warm summer, when channel television would complete the ITV Network's full transition into colour broadcasting. Independent television as a whole launched back in 1955. The first serious challenger to the BBC's monopoly on the medium. Within its first few years, the network expanded to cover nearly all the regions within the UK, all except one. After Grampian and Border launched in 1961, the only area in which ITV needed to make its imprint felt was the Channel Islands. Situated across the ocean, closer geographically to France than it is to Britain, the Channel Islands had to go to great lengths in order to receive television in the first place. And even though ITV had launched in 1955, Islanders would have to wait 7 years before their own regional branch of the network would launch. The result was the aptly named Channel Television, issuing its first broadcast on the 1st of September 1962, led by a statement from Jersey Senator George Troy.
I hope that you will forgive me if I feel a bit sentimental tonight, for I'm feeling a very proud and happy man. Channel Television is officially on the air, and I've seen at last a dream of mine come true. 10 years ago, with a little body of men from the Channel Islands, I applied to the Postmaster General for a commercial radio station license for the Channel Islands. Unfortunately, we were unsuccessful, but we never forgot the idea. And in 1954, when the Television Act was passed in Parliament and became law, we again applied for a permit for a more ambitious scheme, that of a Channel Islands television station. After a long and difficult fight, a real fight I may say, but as you know, all those of you who know me, I've never shirked a fight, we were at last successful, and Channel Television became something that we could look forward to in the near future. Seen it now on the air tonight, and I feel that this company has done a successful job in bringing to the islands what we consider will become the mirror of the Channel Islands. We will bring before you all the most important people in the Channel Islands. You will be with us at all the most important events that take place in these islands, and in fact we feel that you will become part of something which you will always really want, and something which will give a lot of happiness to everybody throughout the Channel Islands. And without keeping our audience waiting any longer, I am taking to myself the particular pleasure of announcing our very first program. Ladies and gentlemen, and especially you children who are watching, I am now going to pass you over into the tender care of Robin Hood.
Throughout the 60s, Channel operated a rather humble independent television service, with much more limited resources than many of its peers and the smallest viewer base to cater for. Channel wouldn't necessarily be able to provide much of its own programming to the network at large, at least not in the same way that big hitters such as Yorkshire, Thames or Granada were able to do. What it was able to do, however, was provide its viewers with extended coverage of local events and affairs. Given the small scope of the Channel Islands, the team behind Channel Television were often able to get up close and personal with its people more than perhaps any other region within the ITV network. One possible advantage of being a smaller scale operation, perhaps. But one disadvantage was that there could often be unique hardships. A quirk of this, of course, would be seen often during strikes. Firstly, in 1968, when the majority of the ITV network was on strike, Channel continued unabated. Given its smaller income, going on strike could have very well meant the financial ruin of the regional company, and no one quite wanted that. This kept Channel as the sole ITV region on the air, both in 1968, but also during the major strike of 1979. Now, that was a disastrous time for ITV, let me tell you. But back to Channel, despite its many unique factors that centred around its operations, there was one technological development that it was rather late to the party for, and that, of course, was colour television. ITV first began the process of transitioning to colour on the 15th of November 1969, simultaneously with BBC One. Over the next few years, more and more of the ITV network would be broadcasting in colour full-time, taking a little longer than the bigwigs may have liked. By 1972, all of the ITV network was in colour, except for Channel. It wasn't for want of trying, of course. The problems Channel faced in this transition were numerous. For one, the cost of converting their studios and equipment to be colour capable, whilst also trying to run and maintain their television service, would take quite some time, and cost a considerable amount of money. Secondly, the issue arose when it came to bandwidth on the airwaves. Colour television used up considerably more bandwidth when compared to black and white, but one thing Channel viewers often suffered with when tuning into their programmes was interference. Given its distance from mainland Britain, combined with the numerous broadcasts occurring in nearby France and other European countries, the issue of minimising interference had to be solved, especially since all television broadcasters in the UK and Ireland utilised the same broadcast channels, as it were. When first establishing television to receive ITV programmes, agreements had to be made with Westward Television, who cater to the southwest of England. Thanks to a microwave relay set up in the Channel Island of Alderney, a link-up with Westward was achieved, allowing Channel to connect more efficiently and reliably with the rest of the ITV network. But a better solution had to be achieved when it came to colour broadcasts. And while some Channel residents were able to pick up colour signals from Southern or even Thames in some instances, that was great for them, but Channel wanted to be able to cater to everyone across the islands, with their own dedicated colour service. The solution was ultimately devised by the Independent Broadcasting Authority, or IBA. This was the main governing body responsible for the ITV network, so it seems fitting that they would be the ones to solve the problem. The result would be Sabre, an array of aerials that would help usher in a new era for Channel Television. Sabre would relay colour broadcasts from Stockland Hill in Devon, and once successful tests had been carried out, it was time for celebrations.
Well, it's been a very busy 3 hours at Jersey's IBA transmitter here at Fremont Point, and the end of a headache for the Independent Broadcasting Authority, who 3 years ago began what they now laughingly call their impossible task, that of finding the best route by which to bring colour to the Channel Islands.
Upon opening the colour service for Channel Television, a lively party was held in a marquee near the main transmitter in Jersey, on Monday the 26th of July, 1976. This was a long-awaited day for both island residents and for Channel Television as a whole, for they now had joined the rest of the ITV network in offering a colour service. For ITV, it marked the end of a 7-year transitionary phase to colour broadcasting, aptly around the same time that colour sets became the standard for British audiences over black and white. The party was littered with members of the IBA, politicians from the islands, and some celebrities, such as Alan Wicker, known for his documentaries. Here's what he had to say about the big day for the Channel Islands.
How do you think this will affect our viewers?
Well, I mean, it's a colour television compared to black and white. It's another thing altogether, isn't it? I mean, I know from my own programmes, when I go to a place like Rio, now Channel put Rio out again the other day in colour. When you see a carnival in Rio in colour, having seen it in black and white, I mean, there's absolutely no comparison. Black and white is like a silhouette. You know, you don't see real things. You don't see real people. It's another dimension to viewing. And once you've had colour, you're never going to go back to black and white. Impossible.
Does this mean then that you're going to be watching more Channel programmes now?
Well, it means I'm going to be watching Channel television, televisions now for the first time, and it's very exciting for me because up to now I've had colour for the last 4 years, but I get it from the Isle of Wight. I get it from Southern Television, so I know everything that's happening in Bexhill, and I don't know anything that's happening in Jersey. So I'm very excited. At last I'm going to see you.
So finally, Channel Television was at long last in colour, and within a year, all of its output was also being shown to audiences in colour. Rather than throw their old monochrome equipment in the scrap heap, much of it was donated to local museums, a lovely gesture helping to preserve key pieces of television history, whilst its operations remained humble and smaller scale compared to the rest of the ITV network. Channel continued to operate one of the most dedicated local services seen on television. Much of these clips are rather endearing to look back on, and if you were an islander during the time, I can only imagine how personal much of these pieces must have felt. Some of the local adverts are also golden. Here's a look at a few of them.
Popping for your shopping at an island-wide store. You get lots for your money, but we give a lot more. We'll be there when you need us, 'cause it's you we're there for. So popping for your shopping at an island-wide store. Popping for your shopping at an island-wide store.
Alderney, the different Channel Island. Easy to get to from almost anywhere. Plenty to do when you get there. And yet, somehow, a place that's managed to hang on to a certain something other places have lost. A subtle combination of tranquility and friendliness. Alderney. Come up and see us soon.
If you think you know how to dance, check out Body Check. They could prove you wrong. Body Check, appearing from Monday at Madison's Lido de France. Body Check, naughty but nice.
Channel would remain this way for several decades, until 2011, when it became one of the last regions to be bought by the recently formed ITV plc, which by this point owned the majority of the network as a whole. But even now, in the 2020s, its focus on local programming is arguably unmatched compared to many other regions of the UK. In 2022, Channel celebrated 60 years on the airwaves, and when you hear some of the people talk about it, you can tell it's made a rather special impression on their lives, even thanks to some of the characters.
Me, Oscar Puffin, my very good friend, a camera person, heading out across the Channel Islands to meet young people. And also, if I wanted to do something fun, I'd basically just say, Oscar Puffin would like to do this activity, and it would happen.
Oh, magic that, isn't it? So tell us, how important was that chapter for you in terms of your career development? Because you've gone into some great things, haven't you?
Yeah, I've done a little bit of TV. I'm doing now a bit of radio. I work on The Breakfast Show on BBC Radio Jersey. Very early starts, Oscar. He could never manage that.
Nice.
So yeah, it was a good foundation for everything, actually. I certainly learnt how to have a good time in the media.
So even though it was the youngest, the smallest, the most strapped for cash of the bunch, despite interference issues and being so late to the world of colour television, we can look back at Channel Television's journey as truly being one of the most unique in British TV history. Thank you to our patrons for helping to support the show, and a special thank you to Macra, Sean Knock, Dord Khan, Ethan Carberry-Holt, Liam Domain, AJ Mac 200017, Deck, Jen, Traffy, Evan Hart 41 Radio, Tim Ripley, Mr. Eurovision 1986, Mananel Thurman, John Wakefield, 40-something Manchild, Jerry Ralph, John McLeod, James Wallace, Ben, Kat Hegarty, Stephen Oliver, Tegan, Shadow Fiend 180X, Swan Ronson, Adam Gamer, Fonzie Daz, Real Random, and Seraphic Euphoria, our AMTV staff members.